We don't serve your kind. Here, the manager said. Then a little girl walked in, and everything changed. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight in Portland, turning the streets into rivers of gray and the sky into a low ceiling of clouds that seemed to press down on everyone's shoulders. Marcus Williams stood outside Le Jardin Blanc, the most exclusive restaurant in the Pearl District, water dripping from his umbrella onto shoes that had cost more than some people's rent. He was tired, the kind of tired that settles into your bones after 15 years of building something from nothing, of proving yourself in boardrooms where you were often the only black face, of smiling through microaggressions and celebrating victories alone in empty penthouses. At 42, Marcus had everything the world said he should want. A corner office at his own architecture firm, a renovation feature in Architectural Digest, and reservations at restaurants with 6-month waiting lists. What he didn't have was anyone to share it with. His wife had left 4 years ago, unable to compete with blueprints and deadlines. His parents had passed within months of each other, as if neither could bear the world without the other. His sister lived in Atlanta with her own life, her own family, her own Sunday dinners that he was always too busy to attend. Tonight was supposed to be different, a celebration. His firm had just won the contract to design the new community center in his old neighborhood, a project he'd dreamed about for 20 years. He'd made the reservation himself, requested the corner table by the window, the one where you could watch the city lights blur through the rain. He stepped inside, shaking droplets from his coat. The hostess, a young woman with precise blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, looked up. Her expression flickered just for a moment before settling into something polished and impenetrable. "May I help you?" "Marcus Williams. I have a reservation for 7 o'clock. She glanced at her screen, then at him, then at the screen again. "I'm sorry, I'm not seeing anything under that name. I made it 2 weeks ago. Spoke with someone named Philippe. Let me get the manager." She disappeared into the gleaming interior, past white tablecloths and crystal glasses and couples leaning toward each other in the warm light. Marcus waited, a familiar tension building in his chest, the one he'd learned to carry so long ago it felt like part of his skeleton. The manager emerged. He was perhaps 50, silver-haired, with the kind of European accent that might have been genuine or might have been carefully cultivated. His eyes swept over Marcus's tailored coat, his Italian leather shoes, his silk tie, and found them wanting. "I'm sorry, sir, but we appear to be fully booked this evening. I have a reservation. Our system shows no such reservation." The manager's voice was pleasant, almost sympathetic, in the way of someone delivering bad news they didn't find bad at all. "Perhaps you're thinking of another establishment." Marcus felt the old anger rise, the one he'd spent decades learning to channel into productivity rather than destruction. He opened his mouth to demand they check again, to show them the confirmation email on his phone, to make a scene that would accomplish nothing except confirming whatever assumptions had already been made. But before he could speak, the door opened behind him, letting in a gust of cold air and rain. And a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6, with dark curly hair plastered to her forehead and a coat that was 2 sizes too big. Water pooled around her worn sneakers. In her arms, clutched against her chest like the most precious thing in the world, was a soggy manila envelope. The hostess stared. The manager's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. The little girl looked up at Marcus with eyes that were far too old for her face, and she said, "Excuse me, mister. Is this where my mommy works?" Her name was Lily. Marcus learned this as he knelt down to her level, the restaurant's politics forgotten in the face of a shivering child. "What's your mama's name, sweetheart?" "Elena Rodriguez. She washes dishes here." Lily hugged the envelope tighter. She forgot her medicine money at home, and she needs it or she gets real sick. "The bus driver was nice and let me ride for free because I told him it was an emergency." Marcus looked up at the manager, whose expression had shifted from dismissive to something more complicated. Behind him, the hostess was already reaching for a phone. "Elena Rodriguez," Marcus repeated. "She works here?" The manager hesitated, and in that hesitation, Marcus saw everything: the back kitchen, the minimum wage, the woman who washed dishes for people who would never see her face. Yes, she's on shift tonight." "Then perhaps," Marcus said, rising to his full height, "you could let her know her daughter is here, while I wait for my table." Something passed between them. The manager's jaw tightened, then released. "Of course! Right this way, Mr. Williams." Elena Rodriguez appeared 7 minutes later, still drying her hands on her apron, her face a mixture of terror and relief that made Marcus's chest ache. "Lily, mija, what are you doing here? How did you—" She dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter close, envelope and all. You crossed the city alone, in the rain? You forgot your medicine money, Mama, the envelope on the counter. Lily's voice was matter of fact, as if she'd done nothing more remarkable than return a library book. I knew you'd get sick again without it. Elena closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were bright with tears. She wouldn't let fall. Not here, not in front of these people. Marcus understood that too. I'm sorry, Elena said, standing and pulling Lily behind her. I'm so sorry for the disturbance. I didn't know she would. Please, Marcus said, don't apologize. He looked at Lily, at her too big coat and her soggy sneakers, and her absolute certainty that crossing a city in the rain was a small price to pay for her mother's health. He thought about the community center he was going to build, about the neighborhood where kids like Lily grew up too fast because they had no choice. Have you eaten dinner? He asked. Lily shook her head. Marcus turned to the manager, who was still hovering nearby, his expression now unreadable. I'd like to add 2 guests to my reservation. The corner table, please, the one by the window. The silence that followed was louder than thunder. Then, slowly, the manager nodded. Elena tried to refuse. Of course she did. I can't. I'm working. I don't have anything to... Your shift was supposed to end 20 minutes ago, the manager said quietly. Marcus noticed with some surprise that the man's voice had lost its edge. And the kitchen can manage. They sat at the corner table by the window, rain streaming down the glass and city lights blurring beyond it like watercolors. Lily sat between them, her envelope carefully placed on the empty chair beside her, studying the menu with the serious concentration of someone encountering a foreign language. What's bruschetta? She asked. It's like fancy toast with tomatoes, Marcus said. Oh. She considered this. I like toast. Elena sat stiff-backed and silent, her hands folded in her lap. Marcus recognized that posture too, the one that said, I don't belong here, and everyone knows it. The community center, he said, and Elena looked up, confused. That's why I was celebrating tonight. I'm an architect. My firm just won the contract to build a new community center in my old neighborhood, the one where I grew up. That's wonderful. It's the project I've wanted my whole career. I used to draw buildings on paper grocery bags when I was Lily's age. Drove my mama crazy. He smiled, and the memory was warm instead of painful. She kept every single one of them. Lily looked up from the menu. You draw buildings? Like, for real? And then people make them? That's exactly right. That's like magic. Her eyes were wide. You imagine something, and then it's real. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. I never thought of it that way. But yes, I suppose it is. The food came. Lily attacked her pasta with the enthusiasm of someone who hadn't had a proper meal in days, which, Marcus suspected, wasn't far from the truth. Elena ate slowly, carefully, as if memorizing each bite. The envelope, Marcus said, nodding toward it. Her medicine money? Elena's face tightened. It's complicated. Most things are. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I have lupus. The medication costs $600 a month. Insurance doesn't cover it properly. I do what I can, save what I can, but sometimes... She shook her head. Lily's father passed 2 years ago. Car accident. He was the one who was supposed to have the good job, the benefits. I was supposed to be home with her. I'm sorry. Don't be. We manage. She glanced at Lily, who was now drawing pictures in the condensation on the window. A house, a tree, 2 figures holding hands. She's the strong one. Has been since she was 4. Marcus watched Lily draw, her small finger creating worlds on frosted glass. She crossed the entire city in the rain, he said, by herself, for you. Elena's voice broke, just slightly. She shouldn't have to be so brave. No, she shouldn't, he paused. But she is, and that means something. Weeks passed, then months. What started as a dinner became something else, something Marcus hadn't known he was missing until it was there. He hired Elena at his firm. Not as charity, but because she was smart and organized and learned faster than anyone he'd ever seen. She started answering phones and ended up managing the entire office, her quiet efficiency making everything run smoother than it ever had before. Lily came by after school. She did her homework at the big table in the conference room, surrounded by blueprints and models, asking questions that made Marcus think harder about why he designed things the way he did. Why do the windows go all the way up? She asked one afternoon, pointing at the community center drawings. So, the light comes in everywhere. But why does that matter? Marcus sat back. Because where I grew up, a lot of buildings were dark. Small windows, low ceilings. It felt like being in a box. I always thought, if I ever got to build something, I wanted people inside it to feel like they could breathe, like there was room for them. Lily nodded, as if this made perfect sense. My mama says you gave us room to breathe. He didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing, just handed her a pencil and an empty sheet of paper. Show me what you'd build. She drew for an hour. A house with a garden, a room just for drawing, a kitchen big enough for dancing. That's where we'd live, she said. Me and Mama, and there's a room for you too, Marcus, for when you visit. The community center opened on a Saturday in October, 18 months after that rainy night at Le Jardin Blanc. Marcus stood at the entrance, watching families stream through the doors he'd designed, past the windows that stretched to the ceiling, into the light that poured in from every angle. Elena stood beside him, professional in a blazer she'd bought with her own money, a far cry from the dishwasher's apron she'd worn the night they met. Lily was inside already, giving tours to anyone who would listen, explaining about the windows and the breathing room with the authority of someone who had been there from the beginning. You know, Elena said, I never thanked you properly for that night. You've thanked me 100 times. No, I've thanked you for the job, for the opportunities, for everything since, but I never thanked you for that first moment, when you asked us to dinner. Marcus shook his head. I should be thanking you. I walked into that restaurant to celebrate alone. I had everything I thought I wanted and no one to share it with. He paused, watching Lily through the window, her small hands gesturing broadly as she explained something to a group of children. Your daughter asked me if that was where her mama worked, and I realized I'd spent my whole life building things for other people, beautiful buildings, empty rooms. And now I build things that matter, and I come home to people who matter more. Elena took his hand. It was a simple gesture, something they'd grown into slowly, carefully, like a plant seeking light. She asked me something last week, Elena said. Lily, she asked if you were going to be her dad someday. Marcus felt his heart stop, then restart. What did you tell her? I told her that families are built, not born. That sometimes the people who love us best are the ones we choose. Elena looked up at him. That the buildings Marcus makes are beautiful, but the family he's building with us is better. They found Lily on the rooftop garden, sitting on a bench that overlooked the neighborhood, Marcus's old neighborhood, transformed now by light and color and possibility. There you are, Elena said. The ceremony's about to start. I know, I just wanted to look. Lily patted the bench beside her. Sit with me, just for a minute. They sat, the three of them, watching the sun set over the city. The sky was painted in shades of gold and amber, the kind of light that Marcus had spent his whole career trying to capture in glass and steel. You know what I remember most, Lily said, about that first night? The rain, Elena guessed. You were so wet. No, I remember the way Marcus looked at us, like we mattered. She leaned against his arm, small and warm. Nobody ever looked at us like that before, like we were worth stopping for. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. He didn't fight them. You crossed an entire city, he said softly. In the rain, for your mama. I know. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. Lily shrugged, but she was smiling. You do brave things for the people you love. That's what family is. Below them, the community center hummed with life, voices and laughter, and the sounds of children playing in spaces designed for them to grow. Above them, the sky deepened into purple, stars beginning to emerge one by one. I remember something too, Marcus said. From that night, the manager. He said something before we left. Elena frowned. I don't remember. He stopped me at the door. He said, I was wrong about you, about all of you. Marcus smiled. I told him he wasn't wrong. He just couldn't see. And now? Lily asked. Marcus looked at the building he'd created, at the woman he'd come to love, at the little girl who had walked into a restaurant on a rainy night and changed everything. Now everyone can see. Years later, when people would ask Marcus Williams about the greatest building he ever designed, he would smile and shake his head. The community center is beautiful, he'd say, but it's not my greatest work. Then what is? And he would think of a 6-year-old girl with a soggy envelope, standing in the doorway of a place where she didn't belong, brave enough to ask for what she needed. He would think of her mother, who washed dishes to afford medicine and never lost her dignity. He would think of the family they'd built together, the three of them, in a house with a garden and a room just for drawing and a kitchen big enough for dancing. Home, he'd say simply. Home is my greatest work. And it was.